to another episode of Disaster Empire Quick Views. This is the podcast where we talk to thought leaders and innovators in resilience. And I'm excited to have Jeff Brainard here from Regroup Mass Notification with us. And we met fairly recently at a conference. And so I think I snagged you then to be able to talk. So glad to have you as a guest on the podcast today. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ashley.
Great. Well, hey, we're going to jump right into the questions. And so, one of my goals on this podcast is really to share with the audience some of the great tools that are out there. So let's talk about your mass notification tool. And so there are a few right in the marketplace right now that many of us are aware of, but tell me about Regroup and how you guys are different.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, so we've been around since 2006, and, since then, the marketplace has changed a lot. What we've seen more than anything is, basically a lot of acquisition and consolidation. And so I think one of the key things that makes Regroup unique is that we are privately held. And the way that we work with our customers is really influenced by that. Typically when I meet with a user of a tool like ours, their list of, must-haves and nice-to-haves, to get those nice-to-haves, you really have to have conversations, right? Because they're things that possibly don't exist anywhere. And so what Regroup really likes is projects where we can customize our tool to work through a client's needs and create the specific functionality or desired response that a client's looking for. So we do a lot of custom projects with our clients. And sometimes it's not like, hey, we don't need to redesign the whole interface. It may be just, hey, you know what? We're sending out SMS messages. These have a link in them. And we want the link not to be a Regroup link or an anonymous link. We want it to be branded for a company because, of all the increased phishing attacks that are happening through SMS. It may be the request is related to SMS characters. 5 years ago, if you sent a long SMS out, it was complex because it was probably going to break into multiple messages. If a client comes to us and says, well, we would just like to have, more characters, that's something that we can work through and provide them as long as we understand their challenges. So, it's really exciting because we'll get to hear what kind of behavior different organizations would prefer. For example, we have a client and I remember they came to us and said, look, yeah, we do welfare checks. This is pretty standard. After a hurricane, we'll send out a poll and ask for, employees to respond if they're safe or if they're not safe. But what would really be useful for us is if they don't respond, if it was to automatically notify their direct supervisor, because maybe they've heard from them. Maybe they've been in touch with them and can report back. So that was, a pretty straightforward workflow that we were able to create for that client. And since then, it's, they've actually used it and it's saved them a massive amount of time in trying to account for people. So I think instead of just, always assuming everything is an off the shelf solution, maybe sometimes it's easier to look for a tailor.
I think that point is great about the accountability, especially in the way that many companies now, non-retail, particularly are working in terms of a hybrid model or having more employees dispersed because they're working from home. So that accountability piece I'm finding is really rising to the top as a key element of a good alert and mass communication tool. And so I love that nimbleness. So could you talk to me a little bit more about, because I understand that you integrate with Slack and with MS Teams, how is that working? How did that evolution come about? And what are your customers saying about that feature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really just about getting messaging where people are. That came right at the beginning of the pandemic when organizations started adopting tools like Teams and Slack as people moved out of the office space. And something that a lot of people don't even think about are even some of those more, I guess, what you would call old-fashioned tools like paging systems and digital signs. So we always have integrated with those, and those are still a really great thing to connect with. But now your kind of digital version, when you have a hybrid work environment, is Teams, right? Or your Slack channels. And so it also comes across, you're just increasing your reach during an emergency are we hitting people on their cell phones? If their cell phone's in their desk, what does that do? Maybe they don't check their email, throughout the day. Most likely, if you guys are using Teams, they're probably checking that. In addition to that, you're also likely to have it downloaded the MS Teams app on your phone, which means it's just giving you more coverage for reaching those folks.
So, Jeff, now I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests. And because this channel is all about resilience, what does it mean to you?
I think for me, so my background, if you can't tell, I'm a semi-retired pirate based on the tattoos. So I like to bring, boating and ocean cliches into everything that I do. So for me, when I think of resilience, I always think back to, sailing. And if you think about it, if you are a sailor or if you know sailors, they're all about resiliency, and they always have been very worried and very concerned. Even if you look back to the times of the explorers, they didn't just come across the ocean with one boat. They took multiple boats. And so for me, it's not just planning. If your sail goes, if you have a failure with your lines or with the sails, it's the whole picture, the holistic view of planning and getting everyone to shore safely, including the boat. For me, that's just kind of a quick, maybe cliche way of summing it up. But
well, hey, that's great. And my audience knows that I live on Cape Cod. So I don't have a boat currently, but I'm around enough. So yeah, it's great to hear that, right? Resilience. You have to be resilient when you're on the ocean or any body of water, really. Great analogy there. So, hey, I want to talk a little bit more about Regroup and this tool. Can you share maybe a bit more about the evolution? How did it come about? What makes it, stand out, and maybe even who some of your best customers are today or good success stories?
Yeah. So Regroup started back in 2006 at Stanford University. At this time, there was not really anything in the space for emergency notification, mass notification. In fact, it's hard to imagine that we really didn't even have iPhones. It's like this was the third world. We started off working with universities and colleges because those were really the first ones that adopted this technology, probably as a result of the types of tragedies that were happening in those places. If you think about, Virginia Tech and some of the incidents that really pushed these platforms forward. Since then, it's really evolved. I remember, even pre-pandemic, working with organizations, I would say maybe 50% of them, as in the corporate space, had some sort of emergency notification tool. Post-pandemic, I would say probably 90% have a tool or some sort of process for communicating with employees that are not in the office. No one really ever imagined employees not being in the office. Why wouldn't they be, right? And then, as capabilities grew on the mobile infrastructure side, we were able to do more and more things with things like responses, polling, including attachments, and, incorporating kind of a more holistic approach. I think as the users of the tool looked at, emergency response, security, safety, enterprise risk, and how those all fit together when they use a tool like this, and the requests from those folks and what they need to be supported. When you talk about success, there's so many examples. I remember when we first came out with a mobile app, and this was mid 2000, early 2000, around 2014, something around there. We had a university in Pensacola. And I think it was somewhere in North Florida. Anyhow, and they had a lockdown. He had been called by local law enforcement about an incident happening on campus, and he was able to trigger a notification. And this was from our first iteration of our app. So this was a totally different version that you have right now. But he was able to pull over to the side of the road, trigger a notification from his car, the chief of police for the university, and, locked down the campus. And this, when you look back at that today, it's just, it's kind of amazing. Like, this was a success story, but it really was because, there was an actual incident happening, and people were notified on time way before they would have if they were sort of only adopting things that the other universities were doing at that time. Other success stories, if you look at today, we have clients using our risk intelligence platform to be more proactive. So it's moved to a totally different level rather than just getting a phone call where they're actually getting a notification because of a tweet or because of our analyst team that has picked something up to tell them, for example, last year that on the 4th of July, something is happening in Illinois. They were able to push out a notification to let their executives and their team that live in that area on a holiday know that, they need to take shelter and be careful. And
it's great that you shared that evolution, because I'm thinking back to, the school environment, university environments, like you already had to build in the capability to contact people where they are, because you have faculty, administration, obviously everyone supporting the facility, and then the students, of course, themselves moving around in the campus. So you didn't have, a static workforce the way that many, corporations, for example, were interacting with their employees in terms of mass notification. So it sounds like a great edge for you guys to have in the post-pandemic space. And then definitely love to hear some of those, customer success stories. So, hey, share a little bit with me about the footprint of Regroup right now. What are your capabilities? Are you US wide? Are you global? In fact, right now, kind of where are you being used today, and where could customers really ideally use the service?
Yeah, so we have clients using the tool worldwide on every continent, not on Antarctica, but aside from there, we're everywhere. And we also provide our support that way. So we do have a highly distributed workforce ourselves. We have localized support, regional support for clients that are in different time zones. So sometimes we'll be working with an organization that's literally based in South Africa and their entire footprint is in South Africa. Other times it's a bank that has, a big support team based in Ireland or India. And, they're sending potentially messages. But yeah, there's not really any limitations as far as we have on that. One thing, just to kind of refer back to your first question in terms of customization, we do have clients based on that global footprint that have local data storage requirements. And that's one thing that we're able to customize for them based on where we store the data. We can make arrangements to have that be done in London or in Hong Kong. And so that way, they're compliant with their local data storage requirement laws. Canada is another one. Even in Canada, our Canadian clients' data has to stay in Canada.
Yeah, definitely. With all of, GDPR and privacy rules, really coming to the forefront. And I think that'll expand over time. It's great to know that you are thinking about that proactively and protecting that data. Hey, so definitely could talk to you all night, but I know I have to wrap. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with this audience that we didn't get a chance to talk to already?
I think there's always ways as well. One of the things I hear from clients more and more, after having adopted a tool is how to get more ROI. A tool like this, that may not be, the first thing that you think of with, something like emergency and mass notification, but it really can tie into resilience when you think of leveraging it for financial savings as well. We have an insurance customer that, they cover a big portion of the US, I guess all of the US really. And they were using our tool already. They were using our intelligence, and they came to us and said, well, look, we this was the first phase of what we really wanted to accomplish. But, at this point, we would really like to take this and turn it into a way of also reaching out to customers that were exposed to hailstorms or wildfire instance. We want to reach out to those customers proactively because yes, it's great customer service, but also ultimately the return on investment and the financial savings if we don't have to have those payouts. And so, we're always happy to have conversations about using the tool for things that might be outside of like, just reaching out to your employees, that can be really the phase one. But then, who else are your other stakeholders that be part of that larger resiliency picture?
Thanks for providing that more, in-depth and kind of expansive use case too of how customers come to you. So it's great to hear always when things get elevated, right, from an initial engagement, and then they want to come back and use the product more. So thank you for sharing that. Hey, so you've shared with us that you were a former pirate and a sailor. Share a little bit more about your background as well.
Yeah. So Florida, and I ended up sort of semi-retiring as a scuba diver and a sailor and doing scuba and sailing charters throughout the Caribbean. And so, and I still do that part-time, not really. My wife does it. But yeah, so, and then got pulled into this space about 5 or 6 years ago, and just love, the ability to work with every industry where there's human beings. And, from the government side to the corporate space, the healthcare space, the challenges and gaps that exist, and trying to come up with solutions to bridge those gaps has been, really exciting.
Well, hey, fun fact for those who don't know that you have a Malinois. So
yeah, I do. I have
and a lab.
I have a nuclear. I have a nuclear bomb. You can see her in the picture right behind me. She's great. And if anyone is looking at getting a Malinois, you can consider this part of a public service announcement. I think they're great, and you'll really feel good about yourself as a trainer because they will learn everything that you have to teach them immediately. You might also use it as a tool to prevent people from coming over to your house.
Dual use.
I do have, yeah.
Lots of benefits, definitely. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time and coming on and sharing about Regroup. How can people contact you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, you can always find me on LinkedIn or, via email, just easy jbrainard@regroup.com.
Excellent. And we'll make sure to have that information in the show notes in the comment section below as well for the audience. So thank you so much for coming on, Jeff. It was really great to speak with you. And for the audience, please like and subscribe because that helps to grow the channel. And Jeff, again, thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me.